right, welcome to Quintessence, the Quantiphi podcast. Today's podcast will look to bring an outside-in perspective on the transformations within the insurance industry. Though historically considered a laggard from a technology adoption standpoint, the industry is witnessing rapid innovations that are reimagining processes, tech stacks, and operationalizing newer business models. Today, we will deep dive into some of those factors and impact driven by these changes. We also have our guests for today, our agents of change, Daniel Lopez and Bhasker Kalita. Dan, Bhasker, welcome to the podcast. Let me do a quick introduction for each of you. Dan, while you currently serves as the Vice President for Shared Digital Services with the leading supplemental carrier Aflac, Dan brings rich industry insight with close to 20 years of experience in leading core insurance transformation, data innovation, integration services, and digital initiatives with large carriers and with top-tier consulting companies. BK, Bhasker Kalita, also leads our financial services and insurance vertical for Quantiphi, a category-defining applied AI and machine learning software and services company. Bhasker has spent more than a decade in the insurance industry solving transformational problems at the heart of the business, ranging from core systems transformation to modernization of data platforms, and more recently, applying AI ML superpowers to reimagine fundamental business processes across the insurance value chain. Dan, BK, once again, thank you for joining us on Quintessence today.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I look forward to our conversation.
So for today's podcast, we've got this around 4 themes. While I begin with the first one, we can't look beyond thinking about where we are from a COVID perspective. The last few months have seen unprecedented challenges globally post due to the pandemic. And while there have been tremendous hardships with the vaccination campaigns underway, there is now a broader sense of hope of recovering from the pandemic. I want to bring Dan into the first question. Dan, we are seeing the insurance industry recovery underway as well. There have been a lot of lessons learned for the industry, right? The 2 dominant themes that we've seen emerge among leaders are, one is on an absolute basis is business continuity. The second is an accelerated adoption of technology. Question for you is, how do you see carriers coming out of this crisis, and what are some of the key lessons that have been learned during this period?
That's a very interesting question, and I'll probably kind of bounce back and forth between the business continuity and the adoption of technology, right? So first of all, it was clearly something that most organizations, insurance carriers, et cetera, while we practice business continuity, we build out the right plans, we do mock trials, production runs, et cetera. A pandemic of this nature was not necessarily always going to be on top of the minds of folks who create these plans, but it did stress it, right? And ultimately, it did put a real stress, not only, I would say, on the business continuity of an insurance carrier and its organization from a technology perspective. It also put it out on their business partners from an operations perspective, IT partners, employees. So you had this mass wave of individuals and employees and team members having to go remote, right? So just being able to support that infrastructure, be able to support that ecosystem, being able to mobilize quickly, absolutely was key. And many lessons there, because whether the organization itself was ready to have nearly a full workforce being remote, their partners needed to do the same. Their partners could be global, in other parts of the globe, and they also had to do the same. So all the infrastructure, not only for an organization, their network, now you're talking about regional infrastructure, from not only within the region of the US, but globally was being stressed. Individuals' homes, if you think about it, we all went home. Not only do we have to be on virtual calls, potentially your spouse or partner's on a virtual call. Oh, by the way, now your children, if you have children at home, we're streaming Netflix, Hulu, YouTube, endlessly until the schools figured out that they could do virtual learning, and then everybody is streaming. So now your house itself is being stressed. So I think there's many lessons there that we take forward in terms of what's available. And if your infrastructure couldn't handle it, your network couldn't handle it, you had to have a plan to bring those employees back in a safe, conducive environment for it. So I think there were many moving pieces to the business continuity. Quickly, we had to adopt technologies not only for virtual meetings if you weren't already ready. If you had a sales force that was, like in Aflac's case, was more face-to-face, meeting with accounts and enrollment, you had to quickly be able to put a virtual capability out there. as well as, I think more companies who are already down a digital transformation path accelerated it and put their chips in faster and more aggressively because this was the time to do it. I think there's many things that came out of it.
Thanks, Dan. I want to bring in BK as well into this, to bring his perspective as well. BK, from a technology leader in this space, you've had several conversations with leading carriers as well, right? According to you, what are some of those key contributing factors and initiatives by carriers that have actually helped their organization work through some of the several challenges posed by the pandemic, as Dan called out?
Yeah, so now with almost a year into the pandemic and having seen carriers react in these months, I think the key highlight for me is the fundamental shift towards prioritizing the end customer's needs. Right, I think that's been one of the key highlights for me. Now carriers are reimagining their business processes, be it product model, operating model, around the new normal and the end customers' preferences. So when it came to execution, there are two distinct categories. One set of carriers who were ready and were able to move fast. These were the carriers who had been experimenting with these changes, this digital adoption technologies like touchless claims, looking at automated call centers, from a product standpoint, looking at pay-per-use models. They were able to move fast and make prime time changes. Some were not that lucky. For them, the initial months were completely focused around business continuity. These carriers were behind the 8 ball when it came to digital adoption. And now for them, digital is now their number one priority. So net, I saw two distinct categories. One set were able to move fast. The other set obviously picked up as we move towards move through the pandemic.
Got it. Very interesting themes that came out in both your responses, right? One, we spoke about digital, right? We spoke about customer centricity. My next question is focused around the evolution of the insurance customer. We now see that the customer's expectations are set based not just on their experiences within, but actually are influenced majorly from what's happening outside of the industry, right? Customers want the same experience levels with insurance as they do when they, for example, shop online, right? The word digital has become ubiquitous in the industry for the last few years. Dan, can you help us understand how this digital transformation manifests itself across different personas, such as customers, you spoke about agents, as well as employees, and across different insurance processes?
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you saying that digital is ubiquitous, right? I think in today's world, it has become something of a theme, right? That many carriers are going after.
Yep.
I would say that from a digital perspective, digital is really around, it can't be just defined as investing in data, investing in mobility, investing in quote unquote digital engagement with a customer, right? It's really about looking at the right technology and the right capabilities that enhance or advance a business model, right? Because now every business, insurance carriers, included in this statement, have to be looking at digital. It is about moving their business model forward and engaging differently and engaging better. At Aflac, we already had a digital strategy in place for about 12 months prior to the pandemic coming in. So we were already down this path. It was really about setting the foundation and moving forward. And then we doubled down and started aggressively accelerating projects and initiatives, right? So it's really around, focused, as you stated, on the customer, making it easier to engage with the customer, the way the customer needs it, right? Not the way that Aflac needs it, but the way the customer needs it. You can transition that name off of any and place any company name there, right? Is the expectations from customers are greater than what you are supplying as a service. As you stated, their world today is driven by a digital world or a mobile world or an engagement world that's going to be molded and refined in the way they experience retail, the way they experience banking, the way they experience communication, like we're doing today, right? Those expectations are being set outside of the insurance world. The insurance world has to catch up and probably needs to look at specific capabilities where they can leapfrog and potentially set a trend, right? And that's from a customer perspective. If you have a producer workforce or a producer model, you're changing the persona, but some of those same themes and same focus areas need to be modified and personalized for their use, right? Making it easier to look at your products and sell your products, making it easier for them to engage with their customers and how that interaction needs to be. How personalized is the information and the data that can be supplied to an agent, a broker, a producer, so that it's relevant to them at that point in time, and not just them, who they're going to speak with and who they're going to engage with. So that level of personalization is definitely coming up forefront. And then with your employees, again, how is it making it easier for them to work in your organization, to interact within the virtual walls or even physical walls of the workplace, the right level of information as they engage with customers, whether they're internal, external. You need to treat your constituents, if you will, with the same level of urgency and respect and solving. And so that requires a different level of advancements in technologies, right? So it's really about, where does my business want to be? How do I make it easier and better and continuously evolve, coupled with the technology underneath it? So whether it's data, analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, it's really about combining what's best out in the technical landscape with where you really want to be with your business. That's kind of the way I would look at it. So it's not just one area. It's more about advancing your business using technology, if I can simplify it.
Mm-hmm. That's a great perspective. And on that point itself, like you said, the other part of it that enables business digital transformation. BK, you have seen with leaders, you've been part of several such initiatives, right? The other component that supports, like Dan mentioned, such transformation programs are the systems and infrastructure, right, that support such customer-centric outcomes, right? What are some of those data and infrastructure modernization initiatives that you have seen now insurers starting to back, right, to enable this whole digital ecosystem?
Yeah, good question. So the journey to cloud has been fast-tracked within the carrier ecosystem. There's no doubt about it. Historically, carriers have been behind when it came to cloud adoption, but now it's pretty much the center of all conversations. Along with the speed to adoption, we are also seeing a change in the nature of workloads that are getting moved to cloud. As we spoke earlier, COVID-19 shifted the focus back to the customer's needs and preferences, and we are seeing a direct correlation between this shift and the type of workloads that are being pushed or re-architected on cloud. Apart from modernizing core platforms, carriers are prioritizing customer 360 initiatives, cloud data platforms, which will enable them to tackle various newer customer-centric use cases. Also, we're seeing a greater adoption of generally available native services and APIs from the leading cloud providers. These services and APIs have substantially reduced the implementation time as well as the costs of these programs, enabling faster business value realization. If you look at some of the data that these cloud providers are publishing and the backlog that they have in terms of revenue, it speaks highly of the adoption of native services and APIs.
Got it. I want to segue closely into the next section, right? We spoke about what these changes are. I want to now focus on some of the reimagining that's happening from a process standpoint with data, infrastructure, AI, and ML, right? Mm-hmm. And this question is for Dan to begin with, right? Dan, the last few years have changed the way the industry has been using data, right? And I know you are passionate about the impact that particularly machine learning and AI are having across the industry. Can you give us examples or use cases on how data, ML, AI are being used to completely reimagine key insurance functions?
Yeah, absolutely. And Pronoy, I appreciate you saying I'm passionate about it. If you go 10 years ago, I probably would tell you that data was an evil necessity because data was always a part of a downstream problem, right? But in reality, where it becomes exciting is what you can do with it. So carriers, they're rich in data. They're probably rich in insights. Now, the level of maturity that a carrier has in that space is going to be different, right? Depending on how much they've invested, depending on how much the business is driving those investments and how you leverage that. Well, what's exciting is with the level of information and data and a carrier has, they could take advantage of cloud technologies, as BK was speaking with, and how to really leverage that for machine learning and artificial intelligence, and placing that into a process. So it's not just about efficiency and automation, right? We talk about touchless claims being like the next wave. There's been claims automation in the past. There have been rules-driven adjudication processes in place, which was great. But in today's world, with the technology that's out there, you can really add a level of intelligence to that process. And putting that intelligent automation in there with the combination of the data, the information, and the artificial intelligence within there, putting potentially the answer in front of a specialist, or right point in time, what should be the next action for the call center? What should be the right information that is given to an agent as they're calling on an account? What's going to make it relevant for that conversation, right? And as they continue to have that interaction, can they be capturing information real time and adjusting what the model gives back to them? So again, it's personalized. It's personalized for their interaction. It's personalized for the account, or if they're sitting in front of a potential insured for enrollment. And so it's less about flooding data or information anymore. It's about adding intelligence to processes where the business requires it and where a business wants to differentiate. You could take the entire span of a portfolio or the life cycle of a carrier and say, we can put it everywhere, but is that the right thing to do? Right? It's going to be driven by the business need, but the technology is getting more mature and is there. And I think carriers should be looking at specific use cases, which is touchless claims, whether it's intelligent automation for underwriting, whether it's next best action for an agent. There are many use cases that get out there. I think what it is let's focus on a few of them, move the needle where you want to be a differentiator, and take advantage of what's out there in technology, because it's going to continue to evolve and it's only going to get better. And it's really up to carriers to determine where they want to play.
Yep. Dan, very interesting layout that you've given there. I'm going to bring BK in as well. BK, would love to get your perspective on not just the use cases, but some of the impactful ones, right? If you can help us, with some of the use cases that most resonate with you.
Sure. I mean, AI, ML use cases are changing the game across the value chain. There's no doubt about it. When, be it marketing, sales, distribution, all the way to product pricing, underwriting, and then finally loss control and claims, we are seeing a greater adoption and a significant business value being created. Now, if I look at the first segment, which is the front office, if I can use that term, we are seeing a lot of impactful AI ML use cases in identifying the right customers, targeted marketing, lead generation. Post that, once a customer is in the house, how do you do sentiment analysis? How do you know their preferences better? Try to personalize the experience, creating customer lifetime value, and all the way to next best decision, as Dan pointed out. So there are a lot of impactful use cases in the front office segment that we are seeing. And then when it comes to underwriting, low touch underwriting processes, you try to use a lot of doc AI specific use cases by extracting information out of your enrollment forms, your intakes, your submissions, etc. on the fly, and reduce the whole quote to bind process. That's number one. Number two, you're able to write risks efficiently. And number three, you're able to collect a lot of data that will give you the insights that are needed. So a lot of transformation in the underwriting space. And then finally, claims has always been ahead of the game when it comes within the value chain in terms of adopting newer technologies. We're seeing a massive shift. Touchless claims, as Dan called out, is a big one. A prime example being USAA. They were experimenting with a certain touchless claims process, and now they have made it prime time. So we're seeing significant impactful use cases across the value chain. Now, the question will come down to the carrier's choices and priorities, the part of the business they want to prioritize, given the state they are. So there are a lot to choose from.
Awesome. I like the way you've laid that out, BK. We know that machine learning and AI is now having the power to extract information from documents, from voice, from text, from images. But thanks for laying out your perspectives on the impact that it can have in the industry. That's great to hear. My next question is I want to go back to something that both of you said, right? BK, you mentioned about the point of carriers being ready, right? And Dan, you also spoke about the fact that we have to think about the future, right? Thinking ahead in time, and Dan, this one's for you, right? Can you talk to us about some of these emerging technologies or innovations that are soon going to become must-have for every leader in the industry in the near future? According to you, where would you place your bets in the next 3 to 5 years to be future ready?
That's an interesting question. It's I go back to what's the business strategy for an organization? Where do they want to differentiate? That should drive where they're placing their bets. And then there needs to be an element of looking at the horizon and making bets where it may not necessarily always fit right perfectly into your strategy, but will advance your strategy. So those innovative technologies out there that can really move the needle, so you can learn and test and move forward. Because it may allow a carrier to adjust their product or their service in a way that they didn't think about. So there are certain things that are must-haves. So for my span of responsibility and accountability at Aflac, I'm going to continue to place bets in the big data space, in cloud technologies. We talked about machine learning, artificial intelligence. Fortunate enough that I'm allowed to play in that space, right? Have the analytics team and the ability to look at use cases where we can supply that intelligent automation within the business processes, and even some core foundational elements around integration, microservices. How do we add intelligence to that back end where there is a lot of heavy lifting on the development side, right? So to me, those are must-haves, right? Those are foundational. If you're building a new community, a new city, you're reimagining, there's certain foundational principles you need to look at, and technology is advanced there as well. You look at it for our industry and working in technology, we want to make sure that we place the bets in the principles, integration, data, right? The right ability to use machine learning and artificial intelligence. Those things are going to continue to evolve, but I think those are must-haves. Now there's niches out there, right? There are drones, there's IoT, wearables, et cetera. Those are exciting, very exciting. You think about conversational AI. Those are the areas that you can maybe not place a huge bet on, right? But if your business is asking for it, there's no reason you can't try it. Mm-hmm. Learn, test, and adopt where it's necessary for your business to advance. And that's what makes this space exciting. We could all say we're going to place a bet, like if we're in Vegas and say, well, this is going to pan out. So you stick with principles, and then you play in areas that will continue to evolve, but they're aligned with your strategy and they move the needle for your organization, and continue to learn and test, right? Because one thing may work out, one thing may not. It's okay. As long as you continue to move forward. I don't think you can predict the future, but you can continuously build to be future ready and continue to evolve with what's coming down the pipe.
Yeah.
Great perspective, Dan. Love the part how you've laid it out in terms of adopting some of these new niches. I'm going to bring BK in again. BK, you mentioned about the emergence of newer business models. We are now seeing emergence of insurtechs as well. Mm-hmm. Ones who are newer operating models, for example, that are being adopted, right? It feels that the fundamental value proposition of insurance products as a commodity is now being changed into more of a service solution, right? From a traditional insurance carrier standpoint, what would be the bets, some of the bets that they would like to, that they would have to place in the near future?
Sure. You're absolutely right. More and more carriers are gravitating towards bundling various solutions and services along with the fundamental risk coverage. Applied AI will continue to play a big part in enabling this ecosystem. From that perspective, carriers will continue to make big bets on AI-driven initiatives, be it unstructured text, imagery, voice, speech, or for that matter, statistical ML. I foresee a lot of bets being made on all these aspects. Dan mentioned about IoT with 5G coming into the picture. I also foresee big bets in IoT-driven services as well as edge computing. So some of these bets will come in the form of large-scale initiatives with carriers trying things out themselves. In other cases, I also see carriers and insurtechs collaborating to provide the best-in-class experience to the end customer. I mean, net, I feel, some of the good-to-have initiatives that were out there before the pandemic are now completely must-haves.
Got it. Well, that's a great way of laying that out. I think let me put it this way, right? Your perspectives, Dan, BK, around how, not just around how data, digital, and the adoption of some of these technologies such as machine learning and AI, that has been very, very insightful. Not just to think about which of these will persist, but also on how carriers are likely to adopt them and challenge the status quo, right? And all of this while maintaining flexibility and ease in customer interactions, right? Thank you so much, Dan, BK, for your perspective. We are at the end of our podcast. Appreciate you taking us time for talking to us on Quintessence today.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a fun conversation.
Same here. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, team.